Hey, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in as always. Today, I want to talk to you about negotiating, and I want to share with you the number one rule for negotiations. And this is something that's easy to understand, but not easy to apply. And if you can just understand and apply this, you can start to win negotiations and you can start to really have success over the long term in any kind of negotiations that you're involved in any industry, in any space, regardless, because this is a fundamental. This is the number one rule of negotiations. Now, I know a lot of people talk about negotiating and there are a lot of books on negotiations and it's really a topic that's discussed a lot, but I don't really hear this as often. And I want to make sure to address it because in my opinion, it's the number one most fundamental rule of going into any negotiations. And it's important for you to understand this so you can have the upper hand. Before I get into the number one rule for negotiating, make sure to smash that like button, comment your thoughts below or any questions that you might have for me after this. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And make sure to please share this with more people. Let's get more eyeballs on these sales strategies, business strategies, and life strategies. And all that said, let's get into the number one rule for negotiations. So I'm going to say this in very simple terms, and then I'll explain it more. The reality of negotiations, the number one rule for negotiating is to mean what you say. Yes, you heard that correctly. The number one rule for negotiating is to actually mean what you say. Now, let me elaborate on that a little bit because it seems too simple and too easy to be true, where this really is the most important fundamental of any negotiations. And it's the number one thing that you need to understand if you're in negotiating circumstances or situations, and it gives you the most leverage possible, which I think everybody would agree that in negotiations, leverage is essentially what you're looking for. And whether you're trying to create a win-lose, a win-win, a win-win-win, whatever you want to call it, the reality is it's leverage that allows you to go in any of those directions. So that's what you want to create. And the number one greatest leverage you can ever have is to not have a backup option, not have a standard that you're willing to lower, not have something that you say that you don't really mean. And if they continue to press and not give in, then you can back up off that principle and now they have the leverage. And you've essentially lost the negotiations because you're not getting exactly what you wanted and you're not getting what you stated that you wanted to get out of this for it to make sense for you. So let me give you a story that backs this up, and it's a famous story from Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, some of the most successful people on this planet who built the fortress known as Berkshire Hathaway. And they're famously known when they go into negotiations, when they go into acquisitions, so when they're actually buying out companies outright and they're owned under Berkshire Hathaway now, when they go into these negotiations, they famously have certain standards. So they would give you an offer or let you know what they're willing to do, and that is it. They mean what they say. There is no, okay, fine, you meet us in the middle and we'll do this. You give and take a little bit, we'll give and take a little bit. They go in with their valuations, with their ideas of what is fair and what is not fair, with what they will do, what they're looking to do, what they're willing to sacrifice and what they're not willing to sacrifice. So they have very clear standards. They have very clear ideas and numbers and principles that they go in with. And once they tell you what they're willing to do, that is it. They mean what they say. And I personally love this not only because it's so effective and it really comes across when you're negotiating, but also because it's simple. There are no games. It's not a lot of back and forth. It's not a lot of giving and taking. It's not a lot of lowering your standards and then expecting them to lower their standards. Because when you start playing games in negotiations, in sales in general, you start to get games played with you. It's a two-way street. It's a mutual give and take. It's a mutual relationship. You will get what you give and it's going to be reciprocated. So if you go in and you mean what you say and you have standards and you have hard lines that you draw and you're not willing to go above and beyond that, and you go in already having thought out what you're looking for out of this deal, out of this negotiations, out of this sale, then it's very simple. They either have an option to do this or not to do this. And chances are, if they're there and they're willing to negotiate with you, they're looking for something. They're looking for something out of this. And chances are they'll come to an agreement with you. That being said, chances are they also will respect you a lot more for having a standard, for having hard lines, for saying what you mean and meaning what you say. And therefore, there's a higher likelihood of a deal being done, as opposed to them thinking you're just a sleazebag, you're just trying to sell them on things, you're just trying to win them over, you're just trying to, really get the upper hand and create a win-lose situation that's not good for them, but is good for you. That's what they're going to think if you go in with the classic standard way of negotiating and starting high and having them bid a little bit lower and then going a little bit higher and then meeting them over here. So you're both kind of in agreement. I never liked that. And I've been in sales across 7 different industries myself. I've sold in the auto industry where that's very popular and that's very famous. And that's normally how things are done. And I never wanted to do it that way. And surprise, surprise, I was one of the top performers and the top salespeople all the time. By the way, across all the different industries that I worked in. And now I help sales professionals and entrepreneurs do the exact same thing. So I see this in real life, in practice all the time. And it works every single time because of all the reasons I laid out. It's effective. It communicates what you want. It communicates the terms and the standards. You have hard lines. And again, people will always respect you more for having those standards and for saying what you mean. And again, meaning what you say. So there you have it. That's the number 1 rule for negotiating. I hope you actually understand all of the things that come with that and you start to implement this in your sales career, in your business, and in any negotiations that you're involved in moving forward, whether that's to get a raise on your salary, whether to work with a different company, whether it's in a job interview, whatever it might be. Any kind of scenario in life where you're speaking to somebody and you're looking to come to an agreement, come to a conclusion, that's a negotiation. And in any negotiations, the number 1 rule is to mean what you say and say what you mean and have standards and principles in place that you're not willing to negotiate on and you're not willing to back down on. And these are things that have been thought out in advance so that they're effective. I hope you got a ton of value out of that and you go into your next negotiations with excitement because you now have this tool and this understanding that you can apply and actually win in any negotiating situation. And all that said, make sure to smash that like button, please. Comment your thoughts below or any questions you might have, and subscribe to the channel. I would love to hear more from you, and you're going to hear a lot more from me every Wednesday, Monday, Friday, 3 times a week. And all that said, I'll see you on the next video.